Greetings, ladies and metal-gents, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called A Good Pair of Boots That Don't Fall Off While You're Walking, written by GIJoeVibin. To explain why I get all my clothes from humans. Despite being an actor-nan, I must first explain why I don't buy clothes made by anyone else. You see, just as pre-FTL sci-fi writers predicted, we live in an age of absolute abundance of products. I can guarantee that any shop I enter will be well stocked, regularly supplied, and reasonably priced. What they got wrong was that they assumed that these products would be better than those at their day. Oh sure, they are flashier, more sophisticated. I can go get a t-shirt with an inbuilt computer. Its parts deftly woven between the fabric to create a system of outperforming the best handheld devices of my ancestors. Jackets come with inbuilt temperature adjustment systems, meaning you have a far wider range of climates to wear your favorite coat to. The ceremonial troops of our great republic, when on parade, wear boots that feature miniature repulsors, keeping them perfectly shiny and never seeing so much as a speck of dust or dirt upon them. But there is one gigantic problem with them all. They're not built to last. I'm serious. Those shirts, they last about 2 months of regular, not particularly intense wear. The computers they weave in are utterly useless after that point. The fabric lasts longer, I guess, but you bought it for the computer functions, not the shirt. The jackets, by God, they're wonderful. Once they go even a degree out of the recommended temperature range, the whole system is liable to irreparably break, and it just falls apart anyway. I guess the parade boots probably last well, but then the things I hear from my friends about how often he has to replace them. This isn't an accident. It's deliberate. Shorter lifespans for the things we buy means we buy more, much more. When an actor-nan's healthy life expectancy now clocks in at well over a century, that's a lot of time to be purchasing. If you own a t-shirt factory or whatever, you can be certain there's stable business for decades to come. Sure, we all get mad about our favorite clothes falling apart, but we can still get replacements anyway. Even if we're the poorest guys on the planet, so it all works out. Hecataeans, for that matter, aren't much better in that regard. Their problem is that everything is cheap and cheerful, as the humans say. Your clothes do last there, but there's very little else going on. Unsurprising, given that there's so many Hecataeans and other species in the Commonwealth to supply with clothes. Having a shirt is more important than having computers inside that shirt. Now, they're nice to wear, absolutely. They're not uncomfortable, they just lack those sorts of features you can get with actor-nan clothing. Can't speak to species on the other side of the line, because, well, the line is in the way. But would happily guess that it's much the same there. Although, and I gotta stress these are rumors, the loadmasters of a Trixilian who defected, and he says a lot of their clothes just kind of fall apart all the time, and only the expensive stuff lasts. At this point, my human co-pilot started muttering about a guy called Vimes and his boots, which he refused to elaborate on. So, where should you get your clothes then? Go to human manufacturers, that's the answer. These pair of boots I'm wearing right here, United Nations Stellar Army Surplus, which is a bit of a mouthful, I know, cause these aren't combat boots. Combat boots come attached to a set of battle armor and don't get sold to civilians. No, these are patrol boots for when you're out of armor, and they make them for every species with UN citizens. They're resilient, they're light, comfortable, liquid-proof, and by God, they're like a miracle. Shame I had to learn how to tie laces in order to use them, but it was worth it. It's even got the same repulsion technology to keep it clean, and that one does last if you don't run it all day like a fool. The jacket looks good and comes with all the temperature regulation stuff, plus supportable computer stuff. Hell, it even works on a wider range and doesn't irreparably break the second it goes a degree past its limit. And you best believe their vac suits kick the ass of every other model. There's some stuff they got right that no one else thought of. My sibling's company is currently ordering 100 custom-fitted Lordline 8s, the ones with the gravity generators in the arms, that bring stray floating items towards you. Plus the suits internally have gravity, so that you don't have to worry about precious bodily fluids flowing where they shouldn't. I can say, for myself, there's a tiny thing they do that's so astoundingly obvious, you can't believe it took that long. See, with flight suits for pilots, there's a standard of 3 layers: temperature, pressure, and outer. With the last one being just there to protect the inners. Oh, and all the anti-G med dispensers, the bladders to squeeze you and force your blood about, and so on. That's all weaved in between. Now the problem is, in every single species design, that outer layer is a thin skin. If you pierce it, say, to sew a patch on, you'll probably end up breaking some stuff. But if you're a human pilot, or a clever pilot like me, you buy human suits and get an extra layer with which you can sew, pin, whatever, as much on as you want. Turn yourself into a walking sign for every ship you've ever worked on, crew you've ever served with. I've got a patch for every time I've flown a Borogonov River's Run, and just finished designing one for my current crew. Now, you're probably asking why they get all the stuff spot on. If we all get it wrong, there's a few simple answers, really. First, there is less of them, a lot less. They got access to the technology and resources of the galactic power. The Hecatians, to be precise, with about 8 billion humans, when the average species only tentatively breaks the speed of light with a propulsion north of 20 billion. In the last 100 years since they grew, sure, but there's nowhere near as many humans as there are Hecatians. No wonder humans can build so great when they're using the same tech but for less people. You'd probably ask why they're not like us Actonans then, if there's so few of them and so much production. Why they don't just have a load of crap that falls apart after a short while. Well, if you know anything about their history, you know about their Contact War and the Second Hecatian War, 5 years apart, and the outcome is universally considered the greatest upset in galactic military history. To accomplish that upset, they built a lot of guns and tanks and planes. Civilian productions dropped to a fraction, and what was made would only replace what was truly irreparably broken. In times like that, products that don't last when they could have are effectively a threat to the liberty of your species. And so reliability becomes king. Of course, nowadays it's not so dire, but the mindset persists. Even where it doesn't, there's never going to be action backwards, because who wants to be the politician that puts their name on the make your shoes shit again bill? The manufacturers are fired too because they know people elsewhere in the galaxy will buy. But third, and perhaps most importantly, like any species, a lot of them really like to show off. They are just very good at coming up with new ways to do it. So that's why, when you're looking for stuff to wear, to drive, to use, there's only really one corner of the galaxy to focus on. And hey, if the fit I'm wearing now isn't endorsement enough, then I don't know what'll convince you to buy human. End. Story number 2. They Were Our Friends, written by Teller of Tall Tales. Transmission start. They were our friends. So unlike us, and from so far away, our brethren do not come from the same planet, but the stars beyond. It is with great shame that I admit that the first time we met was not on agreeable terms. A territory dispute on a mining planet that grew far out of scope. They fought with a ferocity and zeal befitting the great warriors they were. But more than that, they showed mercy. When we found our positions overrun or captured, we were not executed or mistreated. Instead, we were fed, clothed, and treated with respect. It was the first stone in the foundation of our friendship. The war lasted less than a year, and my father, captured and presumed dead at the time, was instrumental in negotiating a peace treaty between our peoples. By that time next year, I had met my first human. His name was Dembe, similar to my name, Dabin, but that's where the similarities ended. We stared at each other for a long time, holding on to our mother's hands as we studied the stranger before us. His skin was dark, smooth brown like the bark of a nobi tree. His hair atop his head was tiny, tightly packed curls. He had a flat face, with only what I could assume was a nose protruding from the center. As if looking in a mirror, we both reached up to touch our faces. Where his hand laid flat against his cheek, my long-fingered paw curled softly around my blunt muzzle. I don't know who started laughing first, but one of us let out a giggle, and before we knew it, we were both howling with laughter, much to the delight and confusion of our mothers. By sheer luck, it turned out Dembe had moved into the house just down the street. We became like brothers, Dembe and I, spending every waking moment we had together. He had introduced me to a game called Tag, where one of us was it and had to touch the other one to make them it. While I was faster than Dembe by a good margin, Dembe could run far longer than I could. When I began to overheat and was forced to sit and panted away, Dembe would tease me from just beyond arm's reach while glistening with his body's natural coolant. In turn, I introduced Dembe to a game called Riddle Tough, which Dembe told me was similar to the human game called Hide and Seek, except that in Riddle Tough, you were allowed to run away and hide again unless you were tagged by the riddle. I was gleeful to discover Dembe was a natural at the game, able to find me and tag me out. There was one time I climbed a tree to hide. You cannot imagine the panic I felt when Dembe scaled that tree in 3 seconds flat to tag me out. However, Dembe was much better at hiding. I remember one time I had searched for him for almost an hour before walking back into my room, where he fell on me after suspending himself against the wall by the ceiling by pushing against the opposite wall with his legs. My mother rushed downstairs to find us both cackling merrily, as we argued about whether or not that counted as me finding him and tagging him out. We eventually settled on it being a tie. By the time we'd reached adolescence, we'd gone down wildly different paths. Dembe took up Ragtal, Dobia's homegrown martial art, and quickly became the regional champion. I, on the other paw, found myself engrossed in the literature and theatre programs put on by our human teachers. I became quite popular after finding out I had a knack for performing, even taking a lead role as Lord Farquaad in the human play known as Shrek the Musical. I'll admit, I was a little worried that the ending with the falling chandelier could go catastrophically wrong. However, credit where credit is due. The prop team did an excellent job with the fall-away floor and tear-off clothing. However, through it all, Dembe and I remained thick as thieves. For his 18th birthday, I bought him a traditionally made Ragtal knife with an engraving of a human homeworld on the blade. I'd never seen Dembe cry before then, but they were not tears of grief. The bone-crushing hug was evidence enough. Dembe stayed up all night that night, wrapping the knife's handle in the traditional knotted red Trelan silk before sharpening it beneath the light of a full moon, as per our ancient traditions. For my birthday, he got us tickets to see the famous human theatre group Le Fantasma and their rendition of a human play known as Wicked, which was based on one of their ancient fairy tales. I remember so fondly how Dembe had cowered during parts of the play, engrossed in the action. But that was so very long ago. There isn't a thing in the universe that I wouldn't give for those to be the memories of Dembe that came to me in the night. No, those memories are from a time I shall never see again. I remember, like it was yesterday, when the Gegnosians attacked Dobia. I remember how the city burned around me, forced to watch and run as my people were cut down like grass before a farmer's scythe. I remember turning that corner, slamming into the chest plate of a Gegnosian soldier, and knowing that I wouldn't make it to the evacuation port. Then, I remember Dembe, the Ragtal blade I'd given him for his 18th birthday, slipping from behind the soldier's back before being dragged across their throat. He pulled me to my feet and told me to run, told me that he'd be right behind me. I never even considered that he'd lie to me, that he never intended to follow me to the evacuation port, that he intended to die fighting the Gegnosians, like his father before him. I searched for my friend, my brother, for 2 years, praying to any god who listened to help me find him. Did you know that humans have a planet entirely devoted to statues of fallen heroes? They call it Arlington, and for a large portion of the history, he was devoted almost exclusively to those who had fallen in battle in service of their armed forces. But after the Gecknotians' brutal, unprovoked attack, it changed. My brother's statue stands at the edge of a cliff overlooking a beautiful forest of Nobi trees. And there, he is at peace, stoically gazing out over the beautiful forest like an onyx sentinel. I, however, am not so lucky. Thanks to you, I gave up my passion for acting and literature. Thanks to you, I have taken up the blade and incense of my forefathers. Thanks to you, I now command Adobe and Armada, the dogs of war. Thanks to you, I shall know no peace. The humans were our friends, our brethren from beyond the stars. And you killed them, enslaved their children, and destroyed their culture. I would say that I take no pride in destroying your fleet, Admiral Gavrok, but that would be a lie. That Dobian died with Dembe. I relish this opportunity to watch the mighty Gecknotian Empire falter and fail to sink my teeth into the throat of my brother's killers. So pray to your goddess, Admiral, and hope against hope that she is more merciful than I. Transmission end. This transmission was recovered from a black box of the Gecknotian flagship Merciless by a human salvaging crew who reported that the ship had so many holes that we thought that it had gotten caught playing chicken with an asteroid belt, and is accredited to the Dobian Admiral Deben Skarbak Yelkan during the Reclamation War. End of story. I would just like to thank the T5 supporters: Bushmaster 117, Caspar Arnholtz, Draxzoon WRE, Elijah Silvercross, Gray, John Carrington, and Severin Cerberus. Thank you very much.